7669. There are very few people in the Congress of the United States of America today who take seriously and literally their oath to uphold the Constitution. There are very few people in the Congress of the United States today who understand the free market. My next guest is foremost among them, foremost among those who understand and respect that Congress has constitutional limits imposed upon it by the Constitution, and that there are certain laws of nature and laws of economics that even the almighty Congress can't change. Oh, but we know they try, Congressman Ron Paul, don't they?
They sure do, but they learn the hard lessons, and then everybody suffers. I guess that's what we're going through right now.
It is what we're going through right now. Welcome to Brian and the Judge. It's such a pleasure, Congressman. What would they say? I mean, I tried to get Senator Ben Nelson to answer this a little while ago, and he's actually one of the more moderate of the Democrats, as you know, about the moral and the legal and the constitutional justification for imposing crushing debt or inflation on a generation of Americans as yet unborn. Every time they do one of these stimuluses where they borrow money and then spend it, it doesn't work, and yet they keep doing it, oblivious of the fact that these debts will someday have to be paid back. How do they answer that?
Well, they never do, because they only look at half of the question, maybe at one-fourth of the question, because they look at it and they say, well, look at what government can do and does do. They take money and they build public housing, and we give housing to poor people. But the problem is that the houses, no matter what they do, they usually fall down, and it's not a successful way to do it. But they try to get you to concentrate on the benefits, even though they have to deceive you into believing they're really doing good. But what they don't want to talk about is where the money came from. And even today, all this money that they're pumping in, say the TARP funds that didn't work, $350 billion, you could say, well, we shouldn't do it because it didn't work. But we shouldn't even have started,
right?
Because we took it from somebody. We stole it from somebody. It is a moral issue, because literally it's theft. You and I can't take the money, so why should we allow a bunch of politicians go and take money from productive individuals and pretend that we're going to make the economy work again by giving it to non-productive individuals?
Here's one of the most outrageous things done in the waning months of the Bush administration, and I'm not talking about the Constitution or civil liberties strictly, but I'm talking about stealing money. I mean, the American public votes with its dollars not to buy clunkers from Detroit. The House of Representatives says, oh, give Detroit $14 billion. The Senate says, don't give them anything. The president, on his own, using the so-called TARP authority, gives them $17 billion. So the public, which with its dollars doesn't want to buy these cars, through the force of one man, the president ends up owning stock in the companies that make them.
Yeah, it's actually probably a little worse than socialism when you have one man being able to do this. But it's subsidizing mistakes and malinvestment and debt, and just digs a much deeper hole for ourselves.
What can you do? What can Republicans do? And I'll tell you, Congressman Paul, I get callers every day and emailers all during the day saying, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? I voted for the Republican. I voted for the person that I thought most understood the Constitution. I voted for the person that I thought, we're talking about their member of Congress or Senate, who most understood the free market, and they're robbing my children's future. What can I do?
Well, it's not easy, because on the short term, in the short run, you can only do that by voting and participating, running for office, and influencing elections, which is very, very frustrating and tedious. Long term, and I'm sure you understand this very well, it's an educational process. We need more people in this country believing in freedom, understanding how it works, understanding sound monetary policy, looking at our history, and knowing what the Constitution says and why it's important to follow it. If we don't have a whole new generation of individuals understanding this and believing it, there will be nothing left of the Republic, and there's so little left of it right now, and that's what we're on the verge of losing. So the long term, it's an educational fight. I think we are making some progress there, but on the short term, it's awful frustrating. But when you think of it, Obama wasn't elected by very many people. You say, oh, no, he had 51% of the vote or whatever. And I said, well, no, 80% of the people registered answer, 60% of the people turn out, and then he got half that vote. So you're down to about 30% or less of the American people voted for him. So maybe 70% of the American people, for various reasons, did not support him. So there will always be this frustration, and since they're working with a failed system, the frustration and anger is justified. But we're in a desperate need to educate a lot of people as to why we should believe in ourselves again.
You know better than probably anybody in the Congress that this is not a fight between Republicans and Democrats. This is a fight between collectivists, big government people in both parties, and individualists, those who believe that we have the right to choose our own destiny. Why is it that the big government types always win? Is it because government attracts big government types to government, and you are the exception rather than the rule?
Well, they've been conditioned to believe this is right and proper. It's also to challenge the system, you're challenging Santa Claus. But just think of how many people have been conditioned by our public school system and government schools, even through our colleges. They're all taught Keynesian economics, and we're supposed to, just go along. But it's hard to turn down a free gift. But what's happening today is there is a healthy distrust and understanding that this government doesn't work. Government can't be the answer. But it is a struggle right now because they're using the same arguments they used in the 30s. Instead of recognizing that, although I do believe a large number of people are, instead of recognizing that, they're saying, freedom doesn't work. It was that laissez-faire capitalism of Bush. It was deregulation of the markets. And they go on, and they just put another nail into the coffin of capitalism and freedom and sound money. So we are in a desperate struggle to win this intellectual fight.
Should we return to the gold standard?
Well, I never use those words, return to a gold standard. I think our gold standard was deeply flawed. We should follow the Constitution, which says that only gold and silver should be legal tender. But, they had a system where states abused the system. We got off the gold standard easily, like in the Civil War and World War I. But to use commodities as money, to get rid of the central bank, to make sure we don't have a Federal Reserve, don't allow a secret banking system create money out of thin air to pay for all our debt. That is the real evil. It's a moral evil. It's an economic evil. It's a constitutional evil, and that's why governments grow, because of this monetary system. If you can't print money out of thin air and you're held down, governments then remain small. We have a more conservative foreign policy where we don't police the world. We don't have a welfare state, and of course, we'd have a much healthier economy.
Now, what you just described is a government that both Republicans and Democrats have supported. Again, I say the collectivists, those who believe the government is a greater good than the right of the individual versus individualists. And over and over and over and over again, this just keeps happening. That stimulus that the Congress voted, the $1,600 per person, didn't affect us one whit. The $150 billion stimulus after that didn't affect us one whit. The $350 billion, do you, as a member of Congress, does Barack Obama himself, as the new president, even know how Hank Paulson spent that money?
No, I'm not even sure he knows. You
mean it's worse than I thought?
You talk about the interest of big government, and it's pervasive in both parties. Just think of the court rulings where it says, well, it's in the state's interest to rule this way. It's never in the interest of the individual who has rights or don't have rights. It's always, well, this is an exception where we have to protect the state's interest. That always annoys me to no end when we see arguments and rulings in this direction. So the state has so-called rights that they're protecting, and of course, if they understood it, only individuals have rights, and they're not collective, they're not by groups, and they're not by individuals, they're not by religions or sex or anything else. Every individual has rights, and the states don't have rights. The state is there to protect those rights of the individual.
Congressman Ron Paul, Republican of Texas. No one could say it more eloquently. It's always a pleasure. You're always welcome here.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. 866-408-7669. Does the government take away your rights when it takes away your property? We're right back with you on Brian and the Judge.